great to have you with us once again as we focus on Mother Africa. Well, this week we host two former winners of the World Bank's Blog for Development contest. We look at youth and development in Africa. We get your views on the issues as well. And as always, we have Africa's top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gishuru. The Blog for Development contest is a World Bank competition for young people in Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, intended to get them focused and engaged on issues of development. Now in its third year, winners from the previous years have been privileged to network and to attend the World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C. This week on Africa Leadership Dialogues, I'm joined by previous winners, Martha Wakoli, electrical engineer, and Jeremy Kerongo, business consultant. They share their insights on matters Africa and development. Martha Wakoli, together with Colin Namayuba, won the contest in Kenya in 2015, while Jeremy Kerongo and Mercy Okoth won in 2016. Let's get straight to their views on Africa, youth, and development. It's such a great pleasure to host former winners of the Blog for Development contest here on Africa Leadership Dialogues. But whether you were winners or not, Jeremy and Martha, you are worthy of sitting on this platform just by virtue of the incredible work that you've been doing. So let's start with who you are as an African, how you feel as an African, what you're doing in your spaces as young Africans. Martha.
So my name is Martha Wakoli. I am a trainee engineer at Kenya Power, and basically that means I fix power lines, I distribute energy, I increase access to Kenyans. But as an African specifically, I am very proud to state that I'm one of very few African women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And my contribution to that space is as a mentor. I mentor teenage girls in high school to encourage them to follow my footsteps and come and contribute towards infrastructure development in this country. Because I believe firmly that development is influenced largely by women. And if they do not participate in the development of projects, then more often than not, the projects are not sufficient for the needs of women. And this drove me to participate in the World Bank competition, which fortunately I won. And it exposed me to a large variance of factors that contribute towards development, and energy, which is my space of focus, has now grown into this macroeconomic contributor. And I'm very glad to say there's a large push coming from other young people saying they want better, they know better, and now are being better. Thank you.
Wow, so inspirational. Jeremy, tell us about you.
Well, my name is Jeremy Riro. I'm a business consultant. I work with startups and early stage businesses. I help them in building their structures, formalizing their operations, and also, creating their strategies and growth plans. I find it to be an awesome job to do. I find it to be a noble thing to do, because from where I sit, based on research, the development agenda in Africa is changing. We were so much focused on commodity exports in the previous decades, but that's now is changing. And you're now more focused on entrepreneurship. You're focused on agribusiness. And when you come back home and look at the situation that you're having so many SMEs, yes, but most of these SMEs, they are not formalized, they are informal. And so they die over a short period of time. And they need support, they need capacity building. They need someone to tell them how to organize their operations. They need someone to help them organize their finances. They need someone to help them in planning their growth over the years. And that's where I feel I'm comfortable and I'm playing at the moment. And so my role as a young African is to be actively involved in the development agenda in Africa. We are creating a new Africa. Africa is rising. Everyone is talking about Africa rising. But Africa cannot rise if the young people, who are the largest percentage of the population, are sitting and watching. We need to be actively involved. We need to be in the game. And that's what I'm trying to do from my end as an individual, trying to work with fellow young entrepreneurs in supporting them to grow their enterprises. And so last year, or rather this year, when I found out about the Blog for Dev contest, and it was about creating opportunities for the youth, for me it was a natural fit. I really am passionate about it, and so I thought I should participate in it. I should write about what I think is going to be the way forward for us to engage more youths in agribusiness, and also how they are going to use it in generating both income for themselves and development for our country.
So thank you. I want to look at what prompted you to engage in the Blog for Development contest. So on a daily basis, if it's a controversial video, it'll get thousands of views, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands even. If it's a post that's controversial, you'll see people talking about it. But when something like a blog for development, something about opportunity, development, gives you a chance to go to Washington, D.C., to network, to meet some of the policymakers from across the globe, you get fewer people. So, okay, we got 800 entries, I believe over 800. But should we not, if young Africans are saying, I don't have enough opportunities, why are people not paying attention to the opportunities? And what sparked you two particularly to pay attention, Martha?
I think in that space specifically, I would say it might also be the medium in which we are trying to communicate, because young people are very visual, as you might have seen from interactions on social media. And perhaps, as you have seen, they have expanded outside of just having a blog. You can send in photos, you can send in pictures, you can send in videos. And I think that way we reach more young people with like a 6-minute video to try and encourage them to participate. However, from my perspective, I always loved English, by the way. If my Kenya High teacher is watching, good job, because I was best in English in my school, honestly. So I always loved English, and I liked to write, I like to communicate, I like to have people understand my perspective. And so when the opportunity came along, I was like, why not? I mean, what do I have to lose? I've got a few ideas. I think I should push them forward. If I succeed, then I get a bigger platform to encourage more young people to talk about the right conversations. And so actually after the blog contest, it turns out that I did start a page to encourage more young people called Shaping African Conversations, where we can talk about more than just fashion and entertainment, where people can discuss energy, education, infrastructure, gender inequality, and propose solutions to those issues that are really part of our teething problems as a continent and as a country. And so I would say over the year that it has run, I have acknowledged that there's been growth. People are looking more and more towards the right conversation, and I think the challenge for us all is then to provide more platforms for those conversations to be had.
So there is hope. There is movement towards relevant conversations. Give us the web address.
shapingafricanconversations.weebly.com. If you're on Facebook, it's Shaping African Conversations. It's a page that shares opportunities, blogs written by fellow young Africans on various topics, and competitions. So like Blog for Dev is on Shaping African Conversations. You can go and check it out, and you'll know how to apply.
Thank you. Jeremy, your thoughts on the same issue?
Well, when we went to DC early this year, we had the opportunity to meet Dr. Mugisha, and he invited us for an evening to have drinks with him. And we had a long conversation for about 3 hours, myself and Mercy and himself. And all we were talking about is Africa, the role of youth in development. We're talking about our politics and how they influence development.
And just for those who don't know, Dr. Mugisha Kitui, you will remember, many people remember as a politician. What some don't realize is that he's an Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. He's the Secretary General of UNCTAD, a critical role, absolutely critical. Yes.
Thank you for highlighting that, because actually he was speaking on that capacity during the forum where we met him. And so one thing that I came out with from our interaction with Dr. Mugisha, he told us that development consciousness is not a shared value amongst the youth. There are very few youths who are development-minded. There are very few youths who are focused on what's best for the country. Most of the youths are focused on how do I dress today, how do I look, what's the next party, and how are you going to party, and then the selfies and that kind of a trend. But he told us it is a good thing to see that we have a few young people in Africa who are coming up, who are development-minded, who are conscious about their tomorrow and are thinking about their generations. And he gave us a challenge that you to go back home, influence other youths, form a group of youth that are development-minded. You don't have to be a political organization. You just have to be focused and think and forward thinking. Start mentorship programs. Talk to young people one-on-one. Mentor them. And I'm glad my colleague Mother is doing that. I also do it at different levels, both in forums and also at individual levels. And that's how I think we are going to change it, the conversation over time. We might not meet the numbers that we want. We may not get the 1,000 or the millions that we want in a day. But based on what Dr. Mugisha Kitui told us, it's a process. It's a long process. Liberation does not come in a day. It's a process. We'll have to keep working in changing the mentality. It's a mentality issue, and so changing the culture amongst the youths towards being development-minded, it will take a long time, but still we'll be able to do it if we personalize.
Stay with the African Leadership Dialogues.
If you could give a message to other young people out there right now, Jeremy, what would you say? What would you say to them?
I would tell my fellow young Kenyans outside there who are watching us today that this country is ours. We own this country. And whatever we're being told about tomorrow, we must create it today. The successful people who are outside there, they did a lot of work before what we can see today. If we want a corruption-free country, we must start by being ourselves corruption-free. We must start by being upholding integrity in what we do. If we want a developed economy, we must start by focusing on what I can do at my own community level. What can I contribute to the bigger picture? How can I create opportunities for myself and for other people? So it is not about waiting for other people to do it for us. It is us to take up the initiative and write the African rising narrative by ourselves.
That's incredibly powerful. Wow. So be the change. It's been said for generations by some of the greatest leaders in the world. Be the change that you want to see in the world. That's how you contribute. Martha.
I think I would say the very simplest of messages, and one that is repeated fairly often: start where you are with what you have. Always. Whether you want to start, be a businessman, be a politician, be a public servant like myself, start where you are with what you have. I think it is incredibly important to acknowledge all the steps that have been taken by people who started really small and made such a huge impact. And so do not be afraid to begin just because you feel like you don't have enough experience, or you're too young, or you're too feminine. There's no such thing. Just start. You influence people in your immediate circle. Always remember that. Every day you wake up, you're somebody's role model. So make something of it.
So let's talk to government and private sector now, two very important players, and perhaps to the development world. And you can choose who you want to focus on more. If you were to say to some of these key stakeholders, this is what we expect as young Africans. This is what we need as young Africans. This is what you must do. Who would you be speaking to, and what would you be saying? So, Martha.
I'd borrow a message from UNCTAD, the forum that was held here in July, where I happened to be one of the youth delegates, and I was sitting in the State Accountability Rule of Law section. And I'd like to say, I think we need to be deliberate about being transparent on every single level. And this specifically for me is for government and government public sector, because I am a public servant myself. I can speak with some level of experience because I have worked in the system. And I would like to encourage more young people to do the right thing tirelessly. You would say, oh, the system is flawed, is rigged in a particular way, but it will not be unflawed unless many more people who are doing the right thing are actually part of that system and are working tirelessly to correct it. Excellence doesn't know African or non-African, and so we can't say it's an African thing to be underperforming. I don't believe that. I think Africans are gifted, I think Africans are talented and have just as much potential, if not more, than everybody else. And so I would say, be deliberate about transparency. If you're in charge of a project, if you're in charge of a group of people, please take the time to engage them, be honest about the objective, and then work towards it tirelessly.
Wow, wow. Jeremy.
My message would go to the private sector, majorly, but again, also to the government. To the private sector, I look at developed economies, like the US the other day, the billionaires are coming together to create a fund to invest in clean energy. They are focused about their own economies. They are focused about the future of the economies, and they are investing money to do that. I would challenge also the private sector in Africa and in our country here in Kenya to focus also on the long term for our country. What are the key sectors that need investment today, although it might be patient capital, as we might call it in the finance world, whereby you're not getting returns now, but the future generations are going to benefit highly from it. So I would encourage them to start thinking of those kind of programs and investing in those kind of projects for the long term. And also, on the other hand, for the government, the role of the government is essentially to create an environment that is favorable for business to take place. And that the government must do. I believe every government has that responsibility. And by creating an environment that is peaceful, where we have political stability, where we have security for businesses, where we have issues to do with taxation, with ease of starting business being improved, those are the things the government should do. And then the private sector should chip in and invest the money that they have for the long-term projects.
So you guys are so inspirational, and I'm going to come to a very personal question for each of you. But first, before I do that, we're sitting in the World Bank offices right now, and there are a lot of views on some of the partners like the World Bank. What do we as Africa need from the World Bank, from the IMF and other partners? What do we need from them?
We have been over-reliant on donor funding, and the donors come with their own conditions that sometimes are not aligned with our strategic goals as a country or even as a continent. What I think Africa needs, or what we need right now, are partners, business partners. We need to have the World Bank coming to fund projects that are sustainable. We need to have other development agencies coming to fund projects that are not necessarily aid-focused or rather short-term focused, but sustainable development projects whereby you invest in the people so that after you are gone, maybe the project can run for 2 or 5 years. After you are gone, the people are able to run by themselves.
So moving from aid to trade, which is what a lot of us are now focusing on.
I think I'd actually like to borrow something from Jeremy's segment where he said we need to move to sustainability. And I think a large portion of sustainability is actually community engagement. We need to have, whether you're a large development partner or just, working with a county government, we need to have more community buy-in into the projects. I'll speak from an energy perspective. We'll have these huge generation projects and these huge transmission projects, but the locals don't understand that. And so we'll have an issue with way leaves, as you may have read in the dailies. We'll have a problem with land acquisition. However, if the community from the get-go, as we were setting up the infrastructure, had boreholes, had pit latrines, had education on the benefits of energy access to them and to the country as a whole, it might be easier then to reap more impact from the funding that we spend on development aspects as a country again and as a continent. Because I feel like occasionally we measure our result in terms of disbursements as opposed to in terms of actual project completion and impact. So I'd suggest we have a better monitoring and evaluation framework, and we have slightly more community engagement.
So inspired. I hope you're as inspired as I am. And just to finish in very briefly, if you would look into the cameras and deliver a message to an Africa that is a majority of very young people, an Africa that sometimes feels incredibly frustrated. Young people want opportunities, they want to move forward. Sometimes they give up hope. What would you say to that Africa watching today? Look into the camera, Martha.
I would borrow a quote that is somewhere stuck in my room, which is, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. It's just as simple as that. We all see Africa's potential. We all see Africa's promise. But for us to change that promise into an actual reality, we have to take action. So go confidently in the direction of your dreams.
Okay, I would like to say the good book, the Bible, tells us, knock and the door shall be opened. For us as Africa, it's our high time to knock at the opportunities. It's our high time to go for them. Like Mother have said, let's go for what we want courageously. And maybe to mention that this year's Blog for Dev is about agriculture, and I'm so passionate about it. And I've been reading a lot about agriculture. One thing you realize about all developed economies is they had an agricultural revolution before the industrial revolution ticked in. Let's embrace it, let's work on it, and see Africa rise. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for being here. I'm so inspired by both of you, and I truly believe you are the future of Africa. You are what is going to make Africa rise. You are a blessing to this continent. If you're out there and you're young, you have an opportunity with the Blog for Development contest. Just entering the contest gives you a chance. You give yourself a chance to be a winner. What you need to do is take a look. The details. What you need to do is contact us. Details are on the screen now, and enter the competition. As Jeremy has said, it's all about agriculture this year. We look forward to hearing from you.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Fascinating insights there. And it's so important for us to give young people opportunities to share their views on critical issues of development, to meet with policymakers and try to understand and even influence policy direction, and to get into some of the most powerful rooms in the world with some of the most powerful people in the world to learn, to grow, to understand. So happy that these two were able to go through that experience, but you can too. And this is how you can enter the Blog for Development contest. So all the best is only 500 words. Get writing. Agriculture is so important for Africa, but what are your thoughts on it? We'd love to hear from you. Hashtag Blog4Dev, and do share your blog. Enter the contest. Good luck. Time now to take a look at your views on the issues.
This week we asked you, how can intergovernmental financial institutions support youth development initiatives in Africa? Maxwell Wakimani says, most youths lack financial muscle, and getting funding to invest in their initiatives would be a huge boost in eradicating youth unemployment.
My name is Grace Wambui Shenga. I am watching African Leadership Dialogue from Nakuru County. The intergovernmental financial institutions can support the youth initiatives through project lending. They can also support the youth initiatives through giving them advice on how to be self-reliant.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Twitter, @AfricaLD. And on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
And now to Africa's top 10.
On Africa's Top 10 this week, we feature countries with the highest ease of doing business. The aim of the research was to determine how conducive an environment is to starting an operation of a local firm. This is according to the World Bank. Starting us off at number 10 is Namibia. The Southern African country is ranked 108 globally. Coming in at number 9 is Ghana with a rank of 108 globally. Positioned at number 8 is Lesotho. The high-altitude landlocked kingdom encircled by South Africa is ranked 100 globally. Taking the number 7 spot is Zambia. Famed for the Victoria Falls or smoke that thunders, Zambia is ranked 98 globally. Seychelles comes in at number 6 with an ease of doing business rank of 93 globally. Slotted in at number 5 is Kenya. The East African nation comes in at number 92 globally. At number 4 is Botswana. Defined by the Kalahari Desert and Okavango Delta, Botswana is ranked 74 globally. Anchored in at number 3 is South Africa. Commonly referred to as the Rainbow Nation, South Africa is ranked 71 globally. Coming in at number 2 is Rwanda with an ease of doing business rank of 56 globally. At number 1 this week is Mauritius. Known for its beaches, lagoons and reefs, Mauritius surmounts its place as having the best environment for doing business in Africa and is ranked 49 globally. And that's Africa's Top 10 this week.
As always, we end with words of wisdom, and our proverb this week reads, "A boat doesn't go forward if each one is rowing his own way." There's no doubt that right across Africa, we all have a common purpose for dignity, for prosperity, for development. The question is, how do we get there? The first step, perhaps, is in starting constructive conversations around the issues that matter. Blessings to you and blessings